So face your first. There's a bus actually around the back of the railway.
Just as we turned right to go along the riverside, on the right-hand corner stood Queen Mary's house. The cellars can still be seen in the den nights. This house was occupied by Mary, Queen of Scots, in 1562 when she visited Inverness. On the left we have the River Ness. It flows 7 miles from Loch Ness into the sea at Inverness, then out into the Moray Firth. But more on that later. The Greg Street Suspension Bridge was built at the Rose Street Foundry in Inverness and completed in 1881. And in the distance, with luck, you can see Ben Withers, one of Scotland's Munros, at 3,432 feet or 1,046 metres above sea level. And as we approach the end of Bank Street, turning into Church Street, the first building on your right is the Gaelic Church of 1649, now housing a second-hand bookshop. The 3-storey building on your left is Dunbar's Hospital, built in 1668 from the stone of Oliver Cromwell's dismantled citadel, now a shop and cafe. The next building on the left is Bow Court, probably dating from the early 18th century, and the building was restored as flats in 1972. On the right, just before the Hootenanny Bar, an excellent place for Scottish entertainment, is Abertaff House. Built in 1593, this is one of the oldest houses in Inverness, a fine example of domestic architecture of the 16th and 17th century, and contains a turnpike staircase. We are now approaching Stop 2, Queensgate Post Office, an ideal place for the Victorian market and the shops in the city centre. On the right is the Chapel Yard Cemetery. This is situated on the site of a medieval priory of the Franciscan order, probably called the Chapel of the Blessed Virgin Mary, although many experts disagree with this. In common with a lot of Scottish cemeteries, with graves dating from the 18th century, the stones have figures of skulls and crossbones, spades and shovels, and hourglasses, which are a reminder that your time will come. It is also where many famous local families and clans are buried, including some of the MacDonalds of Skye.
We are now crossing Friars Bridge over the River Ness. On our left, great views of our elegant city, and directly below us, the Friars Shot fishing pool, where salmon fishermen cast their nets up to the late 1950s. On our right, downstream, the Black Bridge of 1896, and then the rebuilt railway bridge. The original quietly collapsed in 1989 due to the serious flooding. Nearer the sea, Inverness Harbour and the new York Marina. It's one of Scotland's most sheltered deep-water natural harbours. It welcomes cargo vessels and leisure sailors from around the world. The main cargoes are petroleum products, building timber and grain. Strandboard, made from local timber at a mill near the airport, is exported as far as Istanbul. We now have some lovely views of the riverfront and the castle, but do be careful and look out for the overhanging trees. On the opposite bank, our oldest church, the Old High, then the highest steeple, the Free North Church. On the right, the splendid building with the very grand entrance staircase used to be Queen Street Church, but is now occupied by Chisholm's funeral directors and is authorised to use black traffic cones in the line of its business. Next on the right is Balmain House, the white building with a flag and large chimneys. It was built as a townhouse in 1726 in early Georgian style as a home for an indigo merchant. It was used as a hospital for Hanoverian soldiers after Culloden, and it is now the area office of the National Trust for Scotland. Then we have St Mary's Roman Catholic Church of 1837, home to some beautiful stained glass windows and a very lavish interior. Just after the new innovatively designed kitchen restaurant, we have the Highland House of Fraser. This is the only kilt making exhibition in Scotland, and makers of bespoke hand-sewn kilts for over 50 years. With thousands of patterns to choose from, there is sure to be a kilt here for anyone who fancies wearing Highland dress. And this is stop 4, Anthony Street, the kilt maker.
Yeah, they said, that's what we're looking down.
On your left, across the river, is Ness Bank Church, and recently installed are the statues of the three Graces, Faith, Hope and Charity, sculpted in 1870. These statues used to stand on top of a building on the site, now occupied by the city's McDonald's restaurant. Road Tonnahurig Bridge.
Alexandra, coming up to the canal crossing.
Is the most important engineering project ever undertaken in this part of the Highlands in the last 200 years. As we cross the canal, look to the left and look to the right. You can see it stretching out. In fact, it stretches out from Inverness to Fort William. Built by Thomas Telford and opened in 1822, it connects the North Sea in the east to the Atlantic Ocean in the west, cutting right through the middle of our country. The canal joins up 5 lochs. Brute was the most documented leader of the Picts, and Craigfabric was his headquarters. King Brute, of course, is famous for his connection to St Columba, a saint who was coming up to Inverness to see King Brute to convert the Picts to Christianity. But when St Columba stopped at Loch Ness, he was told of a huge aquatic monster that kept eating the farmers and eating the fishermen. St Columba rowed out to the middle of the loch, said a few prayers, had a word with Nessie our monster, and she hasn't eaten anyone else since. Tourist attractions, well worth a visit.
As we come down the hill ahead of us is the Inverness Firth with Keswick Bridge, which carries the A9 to the Black Isle in the north. In the far distance you see Abbasia and Fort George, the garrison conceived in the immediate aftermath of the 1745 uprising. In the early 20th century, the bandmaster was a Lieutenant F.J. Ricketts. Also stationed there at the time was an eccentric colonel, who was nicknamed Colonel Boogie. When playing golf at Nairn, instead of shouting "4", the Colonel whistled a tune. This stayed in Ricketts' mind and was published in 1914 as a march using the pen name Kenneth J. Arthur. It went on to become world famous as the theme tune for the film Bridge in the River Kwai.
Is Muirtown Basin, and beyond that the Merkinch Nature Reserve. On the right is Muirtown Locks, a series of 5 locks which raise or lower ships 16 metres, 52 feet, and this brings us over the Swing Bridge, one of 7 road crossings of the Caledonian Canal.
Bridge that was designed by J.M. Rendell in 1850. That replaced the 6-arch stone structure built in the 17th century and washed away by the great flood of 1849. It housed the town jail between the 2nd and 3rd arches. The prisoners didn't like it as they got their feet wet at high tide.
We are now approaching She was asked to assist Bonnie Prince Charlie on the run after the defeat at the Battle of Culloden. He was to be disguised in a frock as Betty Bird, an Irish maidservant. She thought the scheme whimsical but went ahead. She helped him escape to the Isle of Skye, where one of our famous songs comes from, the Skye Boat Song. We have had many fine views of Inverness Castle, which dominates the centre of the city of Inverness. The castle comprises of 2 buildings in red sandstone, which was completed in 1836 to a design by architect William Byrne. A succession of castles have stood on this site since 1057. The first was partially destroyed by King Robert I. A replacement was demolished once again in the 15th century. It was extended and reinforced by General George Wade in 1725, following the First Jacobite Rebellion. It was held by General Sir John Cope in 1745, only to fall to Bonnie Prince Charlie the following year. This was probably not the site of Macbeth's castle. Clues to the exact location of that are few, but tradition and geography clearly indicates that King Macbeth's fortress was on Old Castle Hill, giving its name to the Inverness town area now known as the Crown.